what's really interesting, the great runners of the past, like the Emo Zadopeks and Arthur Lydiards, they did it all through just trial and error.
Yes.
Now it's what's happening. The physiologists are saying, oh, we know why that works because this is working this system and this system. But those guys back then just practiced it and thought, no, that didn't work, or try this. And now the scientists are putting a reason to it.
Yes.
And which is good. I mean, I like it. You still have to listen to your body and you have to know what you're doing, but it's nice to have feedback. So the Garmin watch that says, well, look at my heart rate, you know.
Yes.
We didn't have that then.
Hi, I'm Anna Liptak and I've been a fitness trainer now for over 15 years. Over this time, I've been privy to witness so many ordinary people achieve so many wonderful things. Through this podcast and a documentary I co-produced, I'm Not a Runner, I want to share these stories to show everyone that anything is possible if you have the belief and the motivation. So I'm really excited to be here today because I have Grenville Wood in the studio with me today. So Grenville is going to share some tips with us today. So I really thank you for being with us. Grenville holds the record for South Australia for the marathon, which he set in 1982, before IT, before we knew all of the things we do now about nutrition and Garmin watches. So it's incredible. So you must be, well, I know you have a wealth of knowledge. So thank you for being here today.
That's great.
So thank you, and thank you for being here to share your information, because I know you have a lot to share with all of us. And it's very valuable information. It's better to hear it from someone direct than it is to read. I find it hard to read things, but it's really nice to hear and see someone. So firstly, welcome to you, Grenville.
Thank you.
I want to start by asking you about your running career, I guess, in an overview of what you've done over the years, because you've done many things and now you're coaching people too. So,
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess I still have my very first trophy in a cabinet at home from England. I was at school, and when I won a trophy, it's like every athlete, wow, I've got something for this. Yeah.
For all this work I've done.
Bingley Harriers, it sits there, and I remember. But very shortly after that, we came to live in Australia, and I started running with Enfield Harriers. And went through the ranks there of not being terribly good really at running. And there was a lot of really good runners in South Australia. We had world record holders at 16 years old. We had about 3 world record holders really, in that time. And I could hardly make a state team. In fact, I didn't make a state team until I was about 18, I think. But I kept on persisting. I kind of thought, no, I'm going to do this, and kept on training, and had a good coach in Enfield Harriers, Ken Williamson, and I just kept on going, and then eventually I just got better by just persisting and just listening to a lot of other good runners from Enfield Harriers, and then I transferred to when I started working Western Districts, which is out there next to Adelaide High on West Terrace.
With Debbie Meach now, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
She's a
so
great
I mean,
coach.
and that's where it all started. And again, there was lots of really good distance runners. And my very first marathon came. I was running around the city. We used to be able to run right around the parklands on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays because there wasn't as many cars. So we'd run over the busy roads, but there weren't that many cars. So we run all the way around about 8 to 10 mile. And I remember one day I just was talking to Brenton Norman, who was the state champion at that time, and I said, Brenton, what do you have to do to run a marathon? And he said, I do about 100 mile a week for a long time. And I thought that was 160k, and so I said, oh. And then I was doing about 30 miles, or about 50k. And so I didn't say any more on the run, but it was mulling around in my head. And I said, I'm going to do it.
Wow.
So the following week I went out and ran 100 miles. And
the following week you just doubled
I just
it.
went straight to the top, straight. And I was wrecked, completely wrecked at the end of that week, but I kept on persisting. And the state marathon championship was coming up about 4 weeks after that, and I bumped into saw Brenton Norman again probably after about 3 weeks, and Brenton said, "Oh, have you done any more running?" And I said, "I'm doing 100 mile a week." And he looked at me and he says, No, you don't do that. You can't do that straight away. So it's too late. I've done it, and I'm feeling better now. 3 weeks ago I was a wreck, and he goes, "Oh wow!" And but I'm going to do the state marathon next weekend. He said, no, don't do that. This was out at Roseworthy, where there's lots of straight roads.
Yes.
And he said, no, don't do that. He said, look, halfway in the marathon, you should run out 7.5 miles, or 6.5 miles, sorry, turn around, come back to the Roseworthy Agricultural College, and then that's half marathon. Not that there was a half marathon. And then you go out the other direction and come back, but just stop at halfway. That's far enough for you. So I said, oh, okay, Brent, I'll do that, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I started running, and I was running with the leaders, and by the time I got to about 10 mile, the leader at the time, John Williams, he had to zoom off into the bushes for a quick call, and I was leading. And by the time we got back to the halfway mark, I was too afraid to stop because I was leading, so I just kept on going out the other direction, and then needless to say, I kept on going, and my coach at the time said, by the time I got to 20 mile, I was really struggling. But I did finish, and I won the race. And
wow!
And then I was laid on the ground, almost passed out, you know. And I remember to the day that this official came up and said, "Congratulations, Grenville, you're in the national marathon in 6 weeks." I was like, "Oh no!" And I thought, and that kicked it all off. And then I kept on training hard. And then in the national marathon 6 weeks later, I went 6 minutes faster and I was third fastest 19-year-old in the world.
No way.
And that was a bad thing for me because it threw me into marathon running way too
really
early.
quickly.
And that was it.
So what time did you do in the national?
I did 2:38 the first time, and then 2:31 the second time.
Wow. Yeah. So you really threw yourself in. Yeah. Probably not a recommended way of...
No.
So you learned the hard way.
I wouldn't tell anyone to do that. so none of my athletes that I coach, I wouldn't tell them to do that. So.
Well, that's incredible, but it shows you where it sort of started from. So that was quite some time.
It was. And then, you know, I procrastinated for quite a while, and nothing was happening for a few years. And that's when I suddenly decided there's got, you know, the north of England, up in the north of England, was all the best runners in the world were up there, long before the Kenyans were discovered. And I thought to myself, I've got to go find out what they do. So I literally tossed in my job, hopped on a plane and arrived there unannounced, just rolled up into middle of Gateshead. And I knew the best runner in the world, some world record holder lived there.
Who was that?
It was Brendan Foster is his name, and I went up to he worked at the council, the local Newcastle Council or Gateshead Council, and I went up there after arriving on the plane from England, from Australia, and I went up to the receptionist and said, "Oh, I've come to see Brendan Foster," and she said, "He's on holiday for 2 weeks." And I was devastated. I thought, oh no! And I said, but I come to run with him. He said, well, at 12 o'clock, it was about 11 o'clock, and about 12 o'clock, all his other pals go out for a run. Maybe you could go with them. So I waited, and I went back to the car, got my running gear on, and then I went for a run with these guys. And what happened was, you know, that when we were running on this lovely country lane, there was this beautiful stately home, and one of the guys who I'd never heard of before, John Kane, said to me, "I own that house." And I said, "Wow." And he said, "Yeah, I always wanted to be a good runner, and if I got to be a good runner and made some money, I was going to buy it," and I did. And then a bit further on the road, he says, "Where are you staying tonight?" And I said, "I've got no idea." and you know, this sort of thing you'd never tell your kids to do.
So you went to go for running. You just wanted to run, yeah.
So anyway, I stayed with him, and he taught me a lot. And then I got a fantastic coach up there called Alan Story, who coached Mo Farah and, you know, world record holders and all sorts. And it all started from there. Wow. And then I just suddenly realized how hard they trained. That was the big thing for me. And that was really it. It changed my life, completely changed my life.
So that moment of going over there.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I don't know how I even had the courage to do it, but maybe I was just, you know, kind of
naive,
young and stupid.
Well, naivety is really good, isn't it? And that you could travel over there.
I'd never do it now. You know.
And you obviously found your passion. That was the thing.
I did.
So having a passion and a purpose for you, obviously was more important than the job or anything else. You went over there without obviously having accommodation. You just were there for the run.
That's right. That's right. I mean, the main thing I realised over there was being thrown into marathons early. I was just doing lots of mileage, and I didn't realise how important the speed was.
Right.
And that's what getting on the track and running with these fantastic runners and hanging on to them and just getting better and better. And Alan Story explaining to me, what are you trying to achieve and all that. And then, I still speak to him 2 or 3 times a week on the phone now, because we just talk about athletics and the latest in science. We didn't have science back then. It was all, but what's really interesting, that the great runners of the past, like the Emo Zadopeks and Arthur Lydiards, they did it all through just trial and error.
Yes.
Now it's what's happening. The physiologists are saying, oh, we know why that works, because this is working this system and this system. But those guys back then just practiced it and thought, no, that didn't work, or try this. And now the scientists are putting a reason to it.
Yes.
And which is good. I mean, I like it. You still have to listen to your body and you have to know what you're doing, but it's nice to have feedback. So the Garmin watch that says, well, look at my heart rate, We didn't have that then,
No, and that's why I think it's really interesting to talk to you, because you had to learn it all yourself. And I know for me, when I started running, I didn't have a Garmin watch, and I was perhaps faster because I was actually listening to my body and not so concerned about everything. And I think it's a bit like having a baby too. You can get overwhelmed with information,
exactly.
particularly for the people I train, Grenville, which are mainly people starting out, from the other spectrum of yours, is that they're just starting out and then they get overwhelmed and bombarded with all of this information. But
yes.
I think what I really like is what you've just said, is that you've got to understand your own purpose and why you're doing it.
That's
because
right.
Often people get to the end of the races that they go in and they go, I'm really disappointed with my time. I'm like, well, 2 months ago you couldn't even run 10K, so why are you even worried about time? So, there's that whole in between of, just starting to run and enjoy your body, and then letting times and things come part of that, but letting yourself enjoy it and set up that routine for yourself to become that foundation. Yeah. So can you tell me 3 of your most memorable races, first of all, and then we'll go into your top 10 tips, because I know you've done that.
Okay. Oh, gee. I guess that very first marathon was pretty memorable. Yes. I don't know if it's a good memory, but it was certainly memorable. Probably the other one that I remember, one of my big first overseas trips, I went to the Paris to Versailles race, and that's in the days when 23,000 people being held back by guards with machine guns was pretty full on. And we came out on a coach and were dropped off in front of them, and the gun goes, whang, off you go. That was my very first big race. But I guess, winning going up against Bill Rogers, who was one of the best runners in the world when I ran that 2:12. Bill Rogers I knew was a superstar, but I also knew I was running extremely well, and I thought, I'm not going to be afraid of this guy. I'm going to really lay it on the line, and in fact I was leading him by probably 60 meters after about 5 kilometers.
Wow.
And I thought, he's going to have to run to beat me. But I knew at that day I'm going to be incredibly hard to beat to 20 mile. I don't know what's going to happen after that last 6 mile. But we had such a great battle, and I'll never forget that. And in fact, I've met Bill when I went to race in America a few years ago. So that was very memorable. And then I guess the other one was the Wang Australian Marathon in 1985, when they decided to bring in quite a few of the best runners in the world for that. Yeah. And in fact, later on when we see the photograph, you'll see I don't even have a proper number. I had a texted number, because I didn't even really make the grade for that, because I had all these really good runners coming in, gold medalists from Commonwealth Games, Shahang he's from Tanzania. Again, I just knew I'd already won the national 15K title 2 weeks before that, and I thought, if I can win the national 15K, I'm going to be really hard to beat in a marathon, because that was my strength. So again, I just, we went through the first 10 kilometers in 30 minutes and 30 seconds. So that's just over 3-minute Ks. And that's through the hilly Sydney streets. So it was
It
pretty.
is hilly over there.
It is hilly. So it was pretty full on, but I was just in great shape, and
You felt good.
and that was it. Felt good, and then I won it by 5 minutes.
Wow.
So
and you were the unexpected one.
I was the one unexpected one. So you know,
Isn't that interesting?
it was great. So that was that one, and there's just so many races.
How many have you done?
Marathon? Oh, I don't know. To be honest.
You don't count them?
I don't count them. Got no idea. It must be about maybe 8, 15, 20, something like that. The other one that was very memorable was when I turned 40. I kind of got sidetracked after having, my wife we had 2 girls, and you get sidetracked with being a dad and mum and that, and not training as hard. But then about at 38, I started training hard again, because I knew 40 years old was the start of masters running, and I wanted to go and do something I'd never won, and that was to win a world title. So I went to the World Masters title in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and I did win the 10K there. So that was pretty special for me, because it's something that's tangible
to come back,
come back. Yeah. And so that was it. But there's lots of things. Even just going out there on a Saturday, sometimes I come home and I'm really wrapped with what I've done. It doesn't have to be a big race. It's an internal thing.
Because you're not racing anymore, per se,
I don't. No,
you just do it for
people
enjoyment?
are always saying, "Why don't you race?" But I don't feel like I need to now. I feel like I can I just know when I've done well, and it makes me feel good. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's about making yourself feel good, and as long as you feel good. But I know you did tell me the story over dinner that someone after your Brisbane marathon said to you, "Oh, bad luck. You've done a really good time and everything."
And I was 40 then, and I went up to the Brisbane Marathon, and I came second. And I only looked at it the other day. It was about I think I ran about 2:21 or 2:22. But when you've been running 2:12s and 2:13s, and going to Japan and doing the same, and great races, and then you come back and run 2:22. But you're 40, you think, oh, hang on a minute, I was wrapped with it. But when I got back to Adelaide, and people, oh, bad luck,
and that's a backhanded slap. It's really a backhanded slap. And it's, I'm having to do that myself at the moment. Not that I'm racing anywhere near your times, but, I was much faster. And now I'm having to sort of put the towel between my legs and be okay with running a bit slower and happy with it, and, putting myself out there. And, people saying that to people, it's a really hard thing. And I think that was one of the things that you've done as our first tip today. And you've said that before about when you went to the Nationals, that even though you were, I think it was the Nationals you were just talking about then, the Wang Marathon, where you were kind of the underdog coming in, but you had the belief in yourself. Yeah. It's about that belief, isn't it? That you can just stay strong to you and be happy with what you're doing.
Exactly. One of I think in life in general, you just have to believe in yourself. If you don't ever believe it will never happen. So, and part of that sort of challenge is going for it and trying and knowing you're getting better and things like that. So the end result's not always that important, but if you know you've done really well to get there, then it's a really good feeling inside. And even now, I still have that now. I still go out like even this morning, shocking weather, you're hearing the rain and all that, and it gets to just after 5 o'clock, and you think, oh, I better get up and go. And but then when you get back, you feel really good about it.
Because you actually overcame that
did it. Where if I had stayed in bed,
yes,
I'd have probably been feeling now, oh, I wish I'd gone this morning.
Yeah, and feeling really bad, isn't it? So yes. I agree with you, and getting out in the elements is actually, it drives you, and it does make you feel better. And like you said, if you don't. So I'm going to move to your top 10 tips, because I could keep talking to you about your history and everything. So I want to thank you, because you've put your top 10 tips for beginner marathon runners, which is great. So if you can share with us about this.
That's what we've just been talking about. Yeah, you have to believe in yourself. The really important thing with any sport, and you see it so much in tennis and all sorts of things, golf, running, you can never say that it's too hard. You have to keep on. And when the worst thing's happening, if you're down in the third set or you've been in tennis or whatever, if you say, oh, this person's too good, it's all over.
It's all
you
over,
are done.
Yep.
when you're running along, you are going, in the marathon in particular, you're going to go through numerous bad patches because your energy system's changing. You know, you're going from burning glycogen to a mixture, then into fats, and then body's like gets a bit might overheated or whatever. So you're going to go through really strange changes as it switches.
And that affects your mind?
And if you know, well, I'm not feeling too good, my legs are getting tired, the minute you say my legs are getting tired, well, they're going to get tired even more. The endorphins stop flowing from your brain. It's all negativity.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's in training as well. Just get out there. And if you feel, sometimes when you're not feeling great, the best thing to do is just put more power into your legs and get them going and see what happens. Because sometimes you can get into a rut and you're just plodding the whole way. But if you pick up the pace, all of a sudden you feel better.
Isn't that interesting? Because I just did a half marathon a couple of days ago, and we got to about the 18k mark, and I went faster, and I felt so much better. All of a sudden, I just like, oh, this is easy again. So it wasn't that plodding.
And so sometimes just getting into a different energy system helps, mental, the whole lot. So yeah, that's very important.
And I think that believe in yourself, I think, you know, what you were talking about before, having that routine, if you can set that routine up, believe that you can get out there and do it despite elements, whether obstacles of not having sleep. If you get out there and do it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the same thing with, you know, starting off. If you're starting off and you've never run before, it's going to be hard, but you've got to believe you can do it. And if you do, you will.
Yes.
You know? So, you know, we were talking before about walking a Stobie Pool and jogging a Stobie Pool, but seeing out the 3 kilometres or 5 kilometre course that you set out. If you come back from that and you've seen out the 3 or 5 kilometre course, walking and jogging, you've achieved what you want to do. And then you'll just progress from there to 2 Stobie Pools of jogging and 1 walking and things like that. And that's all progression. Your body's adapting, you're feeling good about it. You come back and you go, wow, that was great. And I'm better. So.
Yeah, and I was talking to someone today and just about running. She said, I always get out of breath because she's just starting to run. What would you say to that?
Just slow down. I mean, if you're getting out of breath, it's just purely it's rather your energy system hasn't got going. Early on, you can actually feel out of breath because it takes about 3 minutes for that oxygen to get into the bloodstream. And what goes in your lungs isn't instantly into the muscles. The energy system takes a while to get working. And it's a bit like an engine warming up on a car before the heater starts to work, you know.
Yes.
It's the same sort of thing. After about 3 minutes of slow, steady running, then slowly pick up the pace and then you'll be fine. Yeah,
and that's how I find that as I'm getting older, it's probably taking me a little bit longer to get that engine started. And I feel better at about the K or the 2K mark. But, you know, she was saying, oh, I can't run, you know, it's my breath. And I said, but you breathe when you walk and you don't think about it. And I said exactly the same thing, just slow down. People think they have to run fast. And when they run fast, when they're just starting, they scare themselves off and they never do it again.
That's right. Yeah, and a lot of people do that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Tip number 2.
Weekly goals. I guess if you have a weekly goal, then say, right, this week I want to get to 2 Stobie Pools of jogging and 1, even if you get through most of that run and you've achieved that, but the last bit you get tired and it goes down to 1 and 1, then you're still heading in the right direction. So you've got to believe you can do it. Doesn't mean you're going to do it, but you have to believe you're going to do it and have intention to do that. So, I mean, the biggest problem with running is people going out too hard, too fast. Well, obviously you are going to struggle with that. But if you set off slowly and work your way into it and start to listen to the way your body's working, you'll find the point, right, particularly with speed, the point that you can keep on going a lot longer. Distance is the same thing. You might be able to go 1 kilometre and you're not tired at all, but by the time you get to 10 kilometres, you're tired. But the progression is you keep doing it and you'll get further and further and further. So you just got, you know, have a weekly goal. Go out there with purpose. I go out, you know, I tell all my runners, they have to know what you're doing when you go out to train. So what are we trying to achieve today? It's not all just run. It's trying to develop speed. It's trying to develop our glycogen system so that we're not going to run out of fuel. So that is the long run. You know? So they're all different. Your long Sunday run, if that's when you do it, is totally different to when you're doing the speed work with very short recoveries where you are out of breath.
Tell us the difference between those two then, if you can.
Well, the kind of long Sunday run, or a long run, it doesn't have to be Sunday, but a long run is you set off running, your body is really relying on the stored glycogen in your body to supply the fuel for the muscles, and then that slowly kind of goes, gets used up and goes away. So you have to teach your body to dip into fat stores. However, at the same time, the more running you're doing, you get more mitochondria in your muscles, which actually do store more glycogen. So there's two things going on. But you're still, if I went for a run now for a long time, I will run out of glycogen and then slowly switch over to fats. But the more you practice that, the transition between the two, you can actually run on half.
Yeah, right.
And then eventually, if the glycogen did completely run out, you go over to fats and things like that. So that's that. Speed, on the other hand, you're teaching your body to handle really high lactates in your system, which again, your body doesn't want you to run that fast. So it slows it. What it does is that the nice balance of your blood chemistry gets out of kilter, and then your legs go dead, and people talk about I've gone lactic. Well, it's actually not quite gone lactic. It's that the lactate system stopped working properly, and it's not supplying the fuel to your muscles anymore, and they just get tired.
Right.
So again, that's practice, teaching your system to go faster. And a good way of doing that is the talk test. If you talk running and you can't talk, chances are you're actually over your anaerobic threshold. In other words, you're probably going to start producing a lot of the imbalance between lactates in your system and hydrogen ions and all that nice balance of keeps your blood beautiful.
Yes.
The high octane gets out of balance and it breaks down, and then and that's one of the most trainable things that the body can do, is learn to handle higher lactates.
Right.
So a distance runner needs to be able to run fast and still be using oxygen all the time. A sprinter, that's different. That's why they're panting for 20 minutes after they finish a 400, because
they're big and powerful, aren't they?
Powerful. But a distance runner needs to do that. So going out and having purpose is really important.
Yep, and having that routine. I really encourage everyone to have a calendar at the start of the week and go, right, where can they fit in exercise? Because a lot of these people are just fitting in exercise for the first time, and it's really important to plug them in and make them more important than any other thing that you do during the week, because that's what your purpose is, that's what's going to make you feel good. Tip number 3 from Grenville.
Yeah, well, this going back to what we just said, accepting that things don't always go to plan, but like if you're striving to run, let's say you're going to want to run a marathon or whatever it is, and you go out there and it doesn't go to plan, like you wanted to go 16 kilometers and you get to 10 and you're totally wrecked, you have to think to yourself, okay, well, you've got to think positively. Okay, I'm going to do this next time. Why? It's good to look at it and say, but why didn't I go the 16 kilometers? Or did I have a late night last night? So try and be positive about it. Well, that's why. I won't do that again.
So learning from
your mistakes.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to also be smart about it and say, well, not like my very first marathon where I went straight up to 100 mile a week. You don't do that. Get rid of that. You just have to think to yourself, okay, what's sensible? Okay, I've been doing 5 kilometers a week, 5-kilometer runs, sorry. I'd like to see if I can get up my long run to be 7 kilometers or 20 kilometers or whatever it is. If you're heading towards a marathon, you're just slowly increasing those volumes. And also think to yourself, well, how many of these long runs do I need? Well, I certainly don't need them every day. If I could get one a week in really long and the rest is shorter running that just improves other aspects, then that's great. But if I get to that Sunday and that's my long run, it didn't go to plan, could be windy, could be lots of reasons. You just say, okay, I might have another go at it on Tuesday and just get rid of something I'm already good at and put that in, or I'll wait till next Sunday and go again and try and maybe just bring it back a K or so, but just be really positive. But nothing ever is perfect.
And it's never a straight line.
It's
so people,
not.
particularly when they're beginning or starting out, get injured. They, come up against all sorts of different obstacles because their body's not trained. And obviously they've also got to look at their strength work on their legs and et cetera, et cetera. So, some people in my plan, so they're looking at 12 months, some of these people, or 6 months, depending where they're starting from. And they will get injured, and it's okay. You can just go back, not to think it's all over, because it's a normal thing. And when we're using our bodies, and our body's our machine. So if it breaks down and you can't do a run, like you said, on a Sunday because for whatever reason it's not happening, don't worry about it. Just move on.
Just move on.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's it. Look at the long-term goal, and you'll get there.
Because I've got one particular run I'm thinking about at the moment. Now, she ended up doing the Barossa Marathon the other day, and she had to run it in the end. She was only 10 minutes slower than the Claire half marathon, her first one that she's ever done. But her long goal is the New York Marathon. I said, look, your long goal is the New York Marathon. You're going to do it. Get your injury sorted because you're going to do it, but don't keep hammering your body now. Is that what would you say?
I mean, you have to be realistic. And if you get close to a race and you're just not right, well then, you have to be realistic to that. But long term, it's always very long term. I mean, you always have races where they just don't go to plan, and you thought they would, So I think it's important to be realistic, but just make sure, try to be calm about it and think, am I heading in the right direction? Yes, I am. It will get better. That was a hiccup, because most of it, 80% of my running's really good. And that's fine. If it's the other way around, you might have to reassess things. But if most of it's pretty good, just address, well, why are those particular runs not good? What is it? Is it every time I do a long run, or is it every time I do speed work I seem to get sore legs or whatever? Then readdress that and say, right, well, if I'm always getting sore legs, is there another way in? What can I do more volume than speed work if I'm always injured from speed work, or the other way around? If I'm really, really good at speed, I might not need as much. I might be able to get away with fewer long runs because my strength is here. So it's a bit of a balance of one will outweigh another, but you can't completely say, well, I'll never do a long run. I mean, but I still say if you could get to 25 to 30 kilometers in training, and you're doing that regularly, you think to yourself, well, in a race, you're going to get to 42.
Of course you will.
It's not like
Once
you have to do
30.
42 Ks every week. I couldn't do that. And believe me, I've tried in my better days, I've tried everything from running fast for 42K runs on Sundays to just going up in the hills and just running. And I think the better one was just running. Because I found that they're going fast for 42K. I used to have a regular kind of, 32K, 36K, 42K run that I did in a 3-week cycle. I did that leading into one race, and it didn't help me at all. And I was always tired doing that because it's just too much every week. Yeah. So I actually find it's getting that balance. So
and working out your own body, like you said, but being realistic too. I know I go towards the long runs and having that nice time, and I shy away from those speed sessions, but I know the speed sessions are what make me better. So they're the ones I do need to concentrate on too. So you'd have to be realistic too.
You do have to look at it, and that's what it's very important to look at. What do I really need? I mean, a good rule of thumb is what I'm not good at is something I need to do more of.
Yes, the speed sessions.
So there you go.
Tip number 4.
All new things. It doesn't matter if you would go to a gym and you're lifting weights. It's going to be discomfort. You might get to a certain amount of reps or certain distance or speed or whatever. There's a discomfort, but the bottom line, this will pain train the mind. That in racing, as I said before, the minute you say I can't, it's all over. Yeah. So I think the preparing yourself in training and going through, sometimes some of the best runners in the world, you'll hear them say the training's I remember Haile Gebrselassie was interviewed just after he won the Olympic gold in Sydney, and they said, I hear you do some pretty awesome training sessions, and he says, my training's harder than the racing. I enjoy the racing.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's a good point. If you train really, really hard, the racing becomes more relaxed. It's still hard, but it's not a shock to the system. Expecting that on a certain day you're going to produce something special you've never done before, I'm not sure that's going to happen. It's not quite
realistic, is it?
So you have to be pain train the mind and just get used to it. And the brain is very good. I mean, we've got a natural tendency, all of us, that you kind of, if it's uncomfortable, stop doing it. But the more you practice that, the better you. And the brain suddenly goes, oh, that wasn't so bad. And so your pain threshold's gone up a level and another level, and eventually it's like, females giving birth.
You go back and do it again.
They can do it again, but they say
after every marathon, you say, I'm not doing that again, and you go back and do it like a baby.
So I think it's really important to just pain train the mind and just.
And there is that fine line, isn't there, Grenville? Because some people will go so far overboard that they'll pain train their mind, and it can be dangerous. Like I was just talking to you about a girlfriend of mine who just ran too fast for the 10Ks, got a PPB, and she was on the ground at 18 and taken to hospital. So, there's some people who've got a brain that can push them that far, and then there's others who won't push. So you've got to find where you are.
Yeah, you do. You have to be very careful, and that's why it's hard to be a coach. You have to be, particularly with young people. Children tend to be, if you can get people early when they're young, they just naturally run and do things at an incredible level. It's when they get older that they start to think more about it, and that's
they've got fear.
They've got fear.
Yeah, kids don't have the fear.
So if you've got a young athlete that comes right through, quite often they never go through that.
Yeah, interesting.
Afraid. But when you start somebody older, you've got to pain train them, man, because it's something they don't like doing. But it's just practice it over and over again and start at a lower level and keep going. And it's like getting out of, like I was talking about getting out of bed when it's raining. That's also pain training the mind. Who's saying don't get out of bed? It's not your body, it's your mind saying, oh, it's raining out there, it's going to be cold, I'm not going to. But then you do it.
And it's exhilarating.
And it's exhilarating because you think, wow. So it's the same.
And it's rewarding.
It's not exactly pain.
No.
But it is pain training the mind, or it's conditioning the mind.
So getting out in the wind, rail, hail. Yeah. The best run I had, I remember running in at 1:30 in the morning, and it was raining and hailing and wind, and we were running down to Semaphore. And I'll always remember, it was like we were in a movie, and it was so special. It was just beautiful. There's no one else out there. And I always say, if you see people running in the rain, you know that they've got a purpose and motivation, don't you? So tip number 5.
That's really coming down. Once you've got to a certain point in your running, you have to start thinking, right, so what do I need to do to get better? And you can't do the same thing day after day. So you have to start thinking, okay, well, can't train hard every day either. So you might say, right, I'm going to do a long run at some stage in the week. I need to learn to tolerate higher lactate. So that's where you run, where you're at that point where you don't want to talk to when you're running right on the edge, but not over the top of it. And that's anaerobic threshold running. And then you might say, well, I need more strength in my running. So I'm going to go and do some hill reps and then walk or jog down. It might be that. It might be just speed. You might have all the strength in the world, but you just need to learn to turn your legs over fast. Or it might be just, doing short stuff with a very short recovery and putting up with a bit more pain. So kind of modulating your training is working out, what do I need to do? Early on, you just go out there and you just run maybe 2 or 3 times a week and have a recovery day. And then you start thinking, okay, I don't know if I need a day off all the time. I could go hard, easy. And those sorts of things. So that's what I mean by modulate. Having to think. I mean, look, obviously having a coach or having somebody that can tell you what to do, because you can't expect a novice to go what to do. So that's why you have
a coach,
coaches, trainers. So,
yeah, perfect. So tip number 6.
Oh, well, yeah. So learn how to run efficient. That's by far the most important thing for distance runners. So learn how to run efficiently on glycogen and fat stores. So nowadays, going back to the sports science, they can actually show you when you go in a lab test, they can show you as you're running at a certain speed how much fat you're using, how much glycogen you're using, and
what that's on a treadmill test or something.
Yeah,
is it?
and what you see is you see a line that, and then eventually they come together and they cross over. Now, when they cross over and you start using massive amounts of glycogen, then that's going to run out real fast.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like going fast in a car. If you're going to Melbourne, if you've got a certain range on your car and it says it can go so many kilometres on a full tank of petrol, if you go really fast, it will burn through that really fast and you won't get there. You might have gone there faster.
Yes.
But you've stopped at 40, 3/4 of the way.
You're done.
You're done. And there's no more petrol stations.
Yeah.
But if you go the right pace, it will be more efficient. And so being efficient, and that comes from lots of running, you learn to, like if you're running at your anaerobic threshold or that pace where you can still talk, but you kind of don't want to, you will notice after a while that, hang on a minute, now that point is at a faster pace. So you're more efficient at processing your body's systems, as the glycogen, the lactate system in your body is all working much more effectively and efficiently, which comes from practice.
So
glycogen will always run out somewhere, but you'd like it to, if you do a lot of long running at a reasonable pace, not super slow, and you're learning to burn the two of them parallel, you won't run out of glycogen, or you certainly won't run out of fat on any run, because you've got so much fat in your body that you could just go forever. So, well, not forever, but for a long, long time. Certainly ultra marathons, all that sort of stuff. But fat stores are a lot harder to dip into. You have a nasty dips where you feel feel like good, because you're not used to dipping into fat stores. So the more long runs you do, you'll learn to dip into your fat stores and have a nice transition over. But ideally, a really good marathon runner will run straight through on both, or even if they're really, really good, they could possibly get through on glycogen alone. And that's when you see people who will take in some, the gels halfway through a race just to try and top up a bit of the glycogen. You can't fill it right up, but I guess you could just put a bit more glycogen in there through those gels.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to teach your body to burn efficiently, not using the gels in your training,
because you
want that as an extra in the race.
Yeah, so
it's good to do it just before the race. Make sure you're not going to be intolerant to the gels, but not
during the training.
The race,
So in terms of fat stores, so everyone talks about this carb loading and stuff. You would say, what would you suggest for people before their long runs to access their fat stores?
Look, I mean, most of the top coaches in the world now will actually, particularly when they're just getting ready for marathons, not all the time, but we'll actually encourage them to go into their long their long runs. I keep saying Sundays, but their long runs.
It's your routine.
Actually, slightly depleted. So in other words, if we used to race on a Saturday, and then we'd go on a long Sunday run. So the D. Costellos and Moneghettis, all that was our routine. So you're already depleted from your Saturday race.
Okay.
Then you go into a Sunday run. You don't try and, it's not a race the next day, you're trying to run empty. So you're trying to teach your body to run more efficiently on fat stores. So if you tip over at 15 kilometers into your fat stores because you've just run out of available glycogen, you're teaching your body to do
use
that.
your fat stores.
Yeah. Then in a race, give it some more gels.
Yep. And then
it'll even be better.
Yes.
But
use it for when you need it.
That's the principle.
So glycogen comes from carbohydrates?
Yes. Yeah. So glycogen is stored. Basically, glycogen stored. It's basically sugar. It's just glycogen, and it's stored in the cells of your muscles, and then
so don't really have the rice and the pasta before your training runs. That's what.
Look, it's important to have a balanced diet like that all the time, but not overloading. You want to eat enough that you can get through training. Yeah. And that.
Beautiful. I'm sure it's a big story. So I'm really interested in that. But thank you for sharing all of that information. Number 7.
All right. Yeah. Well, heart rate monitors are really good for saying if you're running along and you know that you're running, let's say you're running 5-minute kilometers and your heart rate's at say 160. If you suddenly realize after a while in training your heart rate's at 160, but you're now running at 450 per kilometer, that shows that you're faster, you're more efficient.
You're fitter.
Yeah, your heart's going slower or the same pace, but it's important to kind of say, right, you want to work your system to get better. If you just keep going 5-minute kilometers, your body will say, well, this is all you want out of me, you know? And so the whole idea with sport is to push the body to new levels. And that's my passion is I realize how incredibly smart and intelligent the body is to adapting. So this is another way of adapting. So if you go at a certain heart rate and you can go faster and faster and faster, you're adapting to those new speeds. So it's almost the same as, like you hear about doctors that don't see all these sick people every day. Why don't they get sick? Because their bodies obviously over a long time learned to fight off a lot of these things. Well, it's adapted to it. And,
yes.
And I think even having vaccines, our body's given a vaccine, it adapts to the vaccine, and that holds you off for a while.
The body's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So, training and adapting and lifting weights and getting stronger is just new adaptations. And I think not the speed. The speed's a limiting factor. You want to go faster and
at the same
rather
heart
faster
rate.
And faster and faster, or further and further and further.
And keep your heart rate.
Yeah.
So
if your heart rate starts if you're on a long run and you're running along, I'm using 160 as an example. If you were going along at 160 and nothing's changing, but towards the end, say if by 7 kilometers your heart rate starts to climb.
Yes.
Well, then that's telling you your body's inefficient. It's running out of efficiency.
Yes.
So it's getting tired.
Yes.
And if it gets tired, the heart rate will go up. So at the end of a marathon, you can actually have quite a high heart rate because you're running out of efficiency. You haven't gone any faster. You're just running out of it. So your heart's very good at telling you where you are. So use your heart to say, okay, that's hard enough. If I can go faster at that. And it changes from day to day. So if you're on a windy day and your heart rate's at 160, fine.
Yes.
You might be going slow because you're into a headwind, but you're still working as hard.
Or you've got a cold, your heart rate might be higher, or whatever it is, or
and
heat.
Some of the best runners in the world, if they get out of bed in the morning, I haven't done this, but if their heart rate's up by 10 beats, won't go for a run because they know something's not quite right, they'll recover. And
that's when you know your body really, really well, don't you?
You do.
In terms of this, and training people, like it's, if they're going for these, if they do a certain 10K circuit and they monitor their heart rate and aim for what you're talking about to keep their heart rate for the same, and whether they have to drop their pace to keep their heart rate the same, they can watch that over time, can't they?
You can, and a really good way of training. In fact, one of the best coaches in the world for anaerobic threshold used to get his runners to go around this lap of this big oval, not like a small one. It was probably about 1.6 to kilometers round, 2 kilometers. Every time they came around, he'd call out, "What's your heart rate? Look at the time. What's your heart rate?" Time had to stay the same for each lap. But if the heart rate started to climb, he'd say, right, one more lap, and that's enough, because that's the point where their efficiency is running out. Pace hasn't changed, hasn't got windy. It's just stayed the same. What's changing? Well, nothing's changing. Your body's getting tired.
So some people will go many laps and some people might do one or two.
So the next time you come, you say, right, I'd like to go further. And that tells the coach that maybe I need a bit more volume in my training I'm breaking down through efficiency.
Yeah. Oh, I've got so much to talk to you about. Number 8.
All right, we've talked about practice taking gels for the race, not training, use diet for training. And I think the diet for training is really important. You do have to eat a lot, don't get me wrong. You have to eat the right sort of food, be sensible at what you eat, and that's your training. The gels, I think, are as a great additive. If you're going to go out and your coach says, we're doing a time trial tonight, take a gel. That's
Yeah.
fine, because it's a time trial.
Yeah.
But don't do it for, you wouldn't like to think, oh, I'm going for my morning run, shuffling around the block, but I have my gel.
Yes.
It's
once again a purpose.
Have a purpose. So gels are great, but in the design to have on the go.
Yes.
If you're not on the go, have a banana.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by that.
And what about, for a beginner doing a marathon, where would you suggest they put the gels in?
I'd probably say, right, if it was coming up to a marathon and in the last 3 weeks, the last few runs, you could just give it a try.
Yes.
Because you don't want to have an adverse reaction to gels.
Yes.
That the body can't tolerate it. And then that's when you'd say, well, let's just tone it down. In the next run, let's just tone down the volume of half a gel. Or a gel and some water or something like that. Or even, if people have sugary drinks, not as much sugar in the drink. So that's when I'd use it. But I don't think if they can't get through a run without a gel, it's a fitness, I'd say.
Yes, they need to slow down, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. There's lots more on the gels, though, taking the gels and when to take them through the race.
Look, I think the gels, start taking the gels quite early in a race.
Yep. So before they start the race, like half an hour, like would you say before? Or
no, I'd take them in the race, because you don't want the sugar, you don't want a glycogen, you don't want to have an insulin reaction before you start, because then you go,
yeah.
But once you start running, you're not good. That's not going to happen. You're burning all your sugar levels will be dropping.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd say maybe 5K in.
Yep.
Start topping them up.
Yep. Yeah. And then.
And go from there.
Keep
on going.
Yeah. Okay.
As much as you can tolerate in a race.
Okay. Because my general rule of thumb, and I do about 8Ks, and then I do about 18, then I do about 28, and then 34, and if I need it, 38.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Because it's extra. It's just it's
whatever
the icing on the cake.
Okay, that's good. Number 9.
Get yourself a set of good scales that's got digital readout. When I go for a run, before I go for a run, I hop on the scales. I look at my weight, and then I go for a run. When I come back, whatever it's down, and it can be down 1.5 kilos.
Is that right?
Yeah, easy.
Yeah.
Easy. You've lost 1.5 kilos of fluid. It's not fat. Don't fool yourself to think, okay.
I've lost 1.5 kilos today.
Yes. If it was that easy, it'd be good, wouldn't it? No, it's fluid. And so I make sure that particularly in the summer, but it's surprising even in the winter, you can surprise yourself how much fluid you're losing. And when you think about it, if you look at a 1 litre bottle of whatever, it's a lot of fluid.
It's a lot
of
fluid, isn't it?
And sometimes you might not be a sweater. I'm not actually
I'm not a sweater either.
I don't sweat, but it's gone. It is gone. It could be coming out in vapours.
Pores.
It could be all sorts of things, but it's going. It's going.
Wow.
Yeah.
So replace that during the day.
Replace it straight away as soon
With
as you
salt
can.
or just water?
Oh, look, I like Staminade. I have quite a weak Staminade. I like it because I'm not a great water drinker, as in nothing in it. I like a bit of taste. So I have a 1.25 litre, Powerade sort of bottle there that I've emptied and drunk at some stage, and I just keep filling it with water and add 3 scoops of Staminade, and it's always there. Because I forget otherwise, and I keep on until it's gone.
God, that's an 80s product too, isn't it? Staminade. We used to have that.
Staminade, yeah. Staminade's very good. It's got the, look at the magnesium and potassium levels in some of them, because that's important for running, magnesium and potassium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, tip number 10.
Here we go. It goes back to this pain training in the mind. The stronger you are in your mind, obviously that's not going to come in, but if you are a person that's always making an excuse, it's going to be a lot harder to be in the negative when if somebody goes past you in a race or whatever. So never, no matter what happens, you have to never think how bad you feel. You have to just keep on being positive, because it's your mind that's letting you down. If you're going along and you start to feel worse and worse and worse, the more it's your mind letting you down. There's been some really good research recently where they've kind of tricked people into doing much more than they've been able to before. There was this program on Sports Institute where they put a guy on a bike, and they had the emoji thing pedaling, and he had to do 3 kilometers as fast as he could in the morning. And then he was right into exhaustion, and he got off. And then in the evening, they said, right, you've got to come back and you've got to do this. Now, what they did is they changed all the speeds within the computer. And he said, you just got to keep up with what you did this morning. So when they finished it, they said, well, fantastic, you did do that, but we'd speeded it up 10%.
Oh, wow.
And he actually went significantly faster because his brain wasn't letting him down. He wasn't going, oh, I can't
do it.
If he'd have fallen behind, even if he'd fallen behind, it would have still been faster. But they kept him going. When you're in the lab and on the treadmill, that's the thing that the physiologists do all the time. They keep pushing you and they're shouting at you and saying, come on, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Which is in a lot of sports, you see that. And you've just got to keep that person really focused on it. Don't let them think about the negative. And I think just the better you get at any sport, there's not too many people that let themselves down mentally. But it's very important in training. And I think it starts from the training. Don't let yourself down in training. If you think, oh, but it'll be all right in the race. No, it won't be all right.
Just do it now.
Just do it now. Yeah.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I find, I've done a few marathons, and the best one up for me and for, sort of the beginner type runners is the New York Marathon, because there's so much activity and so much chanting, and everyone, like I got my PB in New York, which I think is kind of a harder race, but it's all that positive energy. You don't have time to think of that internal.
No.
And I think even running for, by yourself, some people love that, and some people need other people to run with because it takes the thoughts of their internal, because everyone's got this internal chant, but coming up with mantras and other thoughts that you can think of when that negative voice, because we've all got that negative voice, and we've got those negative voices around us all the time. I was talking to Colin Ambrose, who just came second in the Barossa Marathon the other day, about his running. He started at 49. Now you can imagine what ceilings people put on him, saying, oh, you can't run. And now he's winning it at 50, well, coming second in the Barossa Marathon at 53. If you don't put ceilings on yourself and you let yourself grow, anything's possible.
That's right. I mean, you do have to listen. I mean, it says the mind will let you down, not your body. Well, there is a point where the body will let you down. But you've just got to make sure, as a coach, it's always hard because you have to think to yourself, is this person always letting themselves down mentally, or is it their body that's doing it? So if you're in a marathon, if they start to stagger all over the road and the heat's got to them, well, that's the body.
Take them off,
help them. But you kind of feel pretty confident when somebody's pretty tough in training and can see it through, and it's just they're going to do it in a race. So
yeah, it's interesting. It is that fine line.
It is a fine line,
and finding it for yourself too. Am I heading into injury, or am I? Not. It's finding it. Or am I making an excuse?
Over the last 6 weeks, I've kind of decided I'll do a little bit more. And 6 weeks ago, when I upped my mileage again and started training twice a day again, I was just so tired, just like that very first marathon. But the same thing is, I've just kept on being positive, and sometimes I go out, and what really surprises me, sometimes on my second run of the day I'll go out and I'm just so tired, but within 3 or 4 minutes of going and getting slowly starting, all of a sudden I start to push myself a bit and I start feeling really good. And you come home from that run and you think, oh my God, I went really fast this afternoon, but I didn't want to go. I did go, but I didn't want to go because I thought I was too tired. So the brain was letting me down, and then you come back with a fast run.
And how good you feel.
And you feel good about that. I mean, it doesn't mean the next day you're not going to be wrecked again. But again, you cannot say, no, I'm not going to do that. It's a bit like even this morning, as I said, horrible weather, you go off, I've got my head torch on, and you're thinking to yourself, if I let myself down this morning, then this afternoon, I'll be, I should have gone this morning.
Yes, and you never get that time back.
And you don't get it back.
So we always say, just get your shoes on, even if you don't feel like it, get out the door, even for 2 or 5 minutes. And if you really don't like it, go back inside. But everyone's always going to keep going from there. So thank you so much for your time today, and I hope I can have you back on, Grenville. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with anybody?
No. Oh my
yes,
goodness me!
How can we forget this?
Well, that's a Commonwealth Games.
Look at this.
This is me here, Rob Di Costella. A few people there know.
Which one's you? Number 76. What race is this?
Charlie Spedding is between us. He won London. There's a few runners there that I kind of know. Oh, there's Steve Monaghetti back there, just behind.
yeah,
A young,
that's
that's his first marathon.
So what race was this?
That was Commonwealth Games 1986, but unfortunately I was injured. This is the one, look at my number.
Yeah.
That's the one where these
you had to write yours on.
Yeah, well, they did. But that was just making the turn. I won that one, and making the turn at probably about 25k. You know, you look at the shoes we were wearing then.
Yes, you didn't even have the shoes that we've all got now.
When you look at the shoes, we could have gone even faster.
I recken 212.
That was 2:13:37.
And this is in the 80s.
Yeah.
And now we've got
That's
everything.
the one where I'm 2:12:50. That's Bill Rogers, and that's me. There began Melbourne Marathon, Frankston to Melbourne.
Wow.
That's when I won that one by. There you go, 2:13:37. That was the Sydney one. That was by far the easiest race I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Easiest marathon I've ever done. I could have gone so much faster, but it was also when prior to that. 3 months, I went to Tokyo and ran 2:13:38 one day before the qualifying period started, so they wouldn't allow it.
No.
One day,
so
I had to come back and do this. That's why I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, and
you did it. 1 second.
Exactly. So so I was way inside of the qualifying. But this is my very first. I told you I had to come back for the national titles after 6 weeks of being a young. I'd run 2:38. This was the one 2:32 where I was running for the state, and I was 19 years old, and that's interstate runners. I think that's Western Australian runner, and then the guy in red is John Duck from Victoria. But that was the one where I ran that. Wow. And that's making a turn, the same course. It was actually in Adelaide.
Look at those shoes.
Look at those. Yeah, not much of those. I don't think they've even seen carbon.
I don't think anyone would have seen so.
So anyway, that was it. So that was a memorable race.
Oh.
And this is one of the first, if not the first, city to bay run. And I certainly wasn't the leading runner, as you can see there. I was just in there with 2 other Western Districts runners. In fact, most of those are Western Districts runners. But I was just a young lad wanting to be a good runner. That's before I went to England.
And City to Bay, what time was that? Can you remember?
Or the time of the race.
The time that you did.
Oh God, no idea.
No idea.
I've got no idea. I set the record for the City Bay in about 1984 or 5 at 34 or something.
And is that still the record today?
No. Some runners from Tanzania or Kenya came and took it, so they've still got the record. But it's still.
And it's a great event, isn't it? We're both on the board now. I'm on the board with you.
Yeah. So it's good to be doing that. There we go.
Well, thank you very much for your time today and sharing all of that knowledge. It's very valuable for all of us and myself. And I've got you, and would be very honoured if you ever wore it. His and Her Time. That's one of my businesses.
Thank you.
Tops to say thank you for coming in today.
Thank you very
if you
much.
can ever wear that would be lovely.
I'll wear that.
But I'm very honoured to have you here talking with you today. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for watching. If you want more, go to annaliptak.com.